This is the story about a little train called Puff and Toot.
Puff and toot, puff and toot, puff and toot's his name. Puff and toot, kitty choo-choo train. Puff, 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 his engine goes. Toot, 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 his whistle blows. Puff and toot, puff and toot, puff and toot's his name.
Puff and Toot wasn't an ordinary train. No, sir, he was a very special train. Every summer he carried all the boys and girls to camp. Puff and Toot was very proud and happy as he chugged along listening to the children singing.
We're off to the country, off to the country, off to the countryside. We're off to the country, off to the country, oh what a lovely ride. We'll see cows and horses and chickens pick and seed. We'll see old MacDonald with lots of pigs to feed. We'll be gone all summer, so let's be on our way. We're off to the country, oh what a lovely day.
As Puff and Toot chugged through the countryside, all the animals said hello to him. First it was the chicken. Then the dog. Then the sheep. And then the rooster. Suddenly, Puff and Toot came to a stop. There, before him, sitting right in the middle of the tracks, was a great big brown cow singing a song.
I moo-moo the cow, I eat lots of hay, I sit on the tracks for most of the day. My milk is so good, it doesn't take long for all little children to grow big and strong.
Puff and Toot was a very polite train, and so he said, very gently,
"How now, brown cow? Won't you please get out of my way? I have a train full of children on board, and we're on our way to camp."
So the cow moved out of the way, and Puff and Toot started off once more. It wasn't long before Puff and Toot came to a big bend in the road. Two men were on the track, waving a red flag. Puff and Toot knew this meant trouble ahead, so he put on his brakes and came to a stop. The brakeman on the tracks called out,
"There was a storm last night and the tracks are washed out. It'll be nightfall before they're cleared again."
Nightfall? I can't wait that long. Isn't there any other track I can take?
"There's an old track that goes clear over the top of a mountain. It's a very steep and dangerous climb. You'd never make it. You're too small."
Gee, I can't keep the children here all night. I gotta make it, 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 gotta make it.
Clickety-clack, the wheels go on the track. Puff and puff, the smoke comes from the stack. Clangety-clang, clangety-clang, clangety goes the bell. Woo, 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 the whistle sounds so swell. Puff and toot, puffin' all the day. Puff and toot, now he's on his way.
It wasn't long before Puff and Toot came to the foot of the mountain.
Gosh, what a big mountain.
Puff and Toot started on his long, steep climb, saying to himself,
I gotta make it, 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 gotta make it.
He got halfway up the mountain, and he just couldn't go any further.
Nope, I just can't quite make it. I'll have to go back to the bottom and start again.
And so down he went to the foot of the mountain and started to climb all over again.
I gotta make it, 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 gotta make it.
Puff and Toot climbed with all his might, but he just couldn't make it.
Gosh, I just can't make it. I'll have to go down to the bottom and start all over again.
And so Puff and Toot once more went down to the foot of the mountain. This time he went way back so that he could get a better head start.
I gotta make it, 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 gotta make it.
This time Puff and Toot almost reached the top, but he just couldn't go any further.
Oh, gosh, I can't go back to the bottom again. I must get the children to camp. I just Gotta make it.
With his boiler practically bursting, steam pouring out from all sides, Puff and Toot made one last effort, and slowly he started to move again.
Gotta make it, 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 gotta make it.
Puff and Toot did make it, and was over the top of the mountain, rolling down the other side and heading straight for camp.
He'll be coming down the mountain into camp. He'll be coming down the mountain into camp. He'll be carrying all the children. He'll be carrying all the children. He'll be coming down the mountain into camp. Woo, 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 woo.
And so they reached the camp safe and sound. And when everyone was off the train, Puff and Toot cried,
Have a good time, and I'll come back to take you home when summer is over.
Puff and Toot sighed happily and started on his way.
Puff and Toot, Puff and Toot, Puff and Toot's his name. Puff and Toot, Kitty choo-choo train.